Great. Thank you. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. So this is John Barr with the Illinois Department of Commerce and Economic Opportunity in the Office of Employment and Training. I'm joined today by Andy Lasasso, Kelly Lapatino, Brian Ellis, and Annie Dorr, along with Lorraine Wareham, who's our grant manager for our Rapid Response program. So we're here today to provide information regarding the 2021E application, really to have a focus on our response or our continued response to the COVID-19 emergency. So as many of you know, we did release a special funding opportunity for local workforce innovation areas, Title IB grantees, back in program year 2019 in the spring of last year. That was focused on primarily layoff aversion directly for businesses. This funding notice is much more broad, right? So a lot of those same layoff aversion activities are allowable under rapid response, but we are looking to broaden the impact and the use of these funds. So we appreciate your participation in the webinar today, and as was mentioned, we will have an opportunity to answer questions at the end. We'll also keep track of those questions and post those in an ongoing question and answer document that will be posted on Illinois WorkNet. Just one quick disclaimer before we really get going here, that this presentation is really for everybody's information, and it doesn't supersede any of the terms of any final grant awards or any of the WIOA regulations. As we know, a number of strategies that we are going to be talking about are considered innovative, and we want to work with you to develop those and to ensure that they meet the eligibility requirements, and we've got the proper documentation to ensure that there's no issues from a compliance standpoint. So to jump into this, let's see here. There we go. So today's agenda, the first is to kind of walk through why are we here, and provide then some background information about the funding notice, information that I know many or all of you are aware as far as our current environment. And then Kelly Lapatino will then review a number of recommended strategies that we want to highlight for job seekers and businesses that are included in the notice. And I would say right at the outset that these recommended strategies, these are just kind of the tip of the iceberg, right? So there's certainly room to be innovative and present additional ideas as well. And then finally, at the end of the slide deck, we'll go through some of the more specific grant application details, requirements, and forms that many of you who have state grants are or should be used to at this point, including the standard application and the uniform budget template. And as we mentioned at the end, we'll have time for a Q&A. All right, so the objective for today is to provide local workforce innovation area leaders with information and resources that will support strategies to serve more job seekers and businesses over the next 5 to 18 months. Recent guidance from the United States Department of Labor really outlined what many of us already know, right? That the public workforce system has a critical role to play in supporting job seekers and businesses during this critical time. And so Training Employment Notice 820 outlined those critical expectations of the system. And that is true not only at the federal level, but at the state. And I know for all of you working at the regional and local area as well. Training Employment Notice 1320 goes a step further and really outlines a strategy of a one workforce system vision, and talks about the importance of building on our service integration efforts that we have started here in Illinois. So just want to highlight on page 3 of this notice that one workforce vision is really directing us to focus on that systemic collaboration with key workforce system partners, really focusing around that integrated service delivery, working towards that seamless and comprehensive delivery of service to customers. The ability to share data and information across partners and programs, being able to leverage our activities, so to package those services for job seekers and businesses, and then ultimately that will lead to increased employment opportunities and outcomes, especially with that emphasis toward work-based learning, and of course, apprenticeship programs as well. So again, those who have worked in the workforce arena, those directors at the local area, other administrators, board directors and staff, this is why we do this critical work, and this guidance just reemphasizes those points to that mission. So as we look at the state and Department of Commerce takes a look at the Title IB activities, we pulled information at the middle of our program year in January. We took a look at our service levels. We took a look at our expenditures to see where we are tracking, and as the regional managers for Title IB have connected with all of the local areas and are starting to engage in a number of one-on-one discussions, really to understand what the landscapes looks like in your local area, in your region. We know in many areas the COVID has had a major impact on our ability to connect with our job seekers, our ability to connect with our businesses, and so this webinar and this funding activity, or this funding opportunity, is really just a starting point of that continued conversation, right, around how can we work through technology, how can we innovate to serve more job seekers, to provide more training, to provide more wraparound services for job seekers. How can we identify those barriers? How can we effectively serve businesses and retain those workers and avoid layoffs? So a couple of just trends, as we look at over the last 4 or 5 years, we noted that when the economy was clicking along before COVID, number of individuals who needed training services and Title IB services had a fairly significant decline from PY 18 to PY 19, from 25,000 down to about 22,000. The next slide here, we're taking a look at where are we at, kind of at the halfway point in this year, and as we look at kind of our plan versus actual projections, we know that we're running behind, with participants, running behind with expenditures. And so again, we want to identify, how can we work with you and support you to serve more individuals. So on the one hand, we're sitting here with a lot of barriers of how to connect with job seekers and businesses. On the other hand, we're looking at a bit of a surplus internally, right, with our program year 2020 funds. So we could be faced with a situation where the COVID, the restrictions lessen. We're able to get back to more of an in-person environment, and the hope is more job seekers who have been sitting on the bench will come in for services, will come in for training, and that will be a significant need, right, for our services and providing training, right? And so our biggest fear is that at the very time there will be a significant increase in the number of customers that need our service, there will be a funding cut. And based on the latest information that we've received from the U.S. Department of Labor, we note that the state could be in line for up to a 10% cut in our WIOA Title IB funding, specifically in the area of dislocated worker funds. You all have noted, or should note, that there was no money. There was no training funds that was provided in the CARES Act. There was legislation, follow-on legislation, that sunset during the last Congress that would have provided additional resources, and that legislation has been reintroduced and perhaps would move forward. But at this point, there are no guarantees with that. We were successful as a state in obtaining some national dislocated worker funds, which is again, we know many areas throughout the state have implemented projects that are utilizing those funds and supporting that additional outreach and relief activities. So these are all very good things, but based on our current kind of dip in participants served and our anticipated or potential cut in funding, this has made this funding opportunity a priority of the Office of Employment and Training to make sure that the workforce system in Title IB are in the best position possible to not only do everything that we can to reach as many job seekers as possible, but also to be in a position to have the resources to serve them. That's the bottom line. As I mentioned, this is kind of our looking at our funding across the last couple of years. We went from kind of a high of 156 million at the state level to what we are currently at 149 million. That did include a 6% increase, but as you saw, many of you saw in your allocation from last year, our actual proportion of the dislocated worker funds actually dropped, right? We had a 5% cut in dislocated worker funds, and many local areas realized that funding reduction. But for the national dislocated worker grants, there would have been a significant, we anticipate there would have been a significantly larger need for additional dislocated worker funds. So again, this slide just highlights that the state, in an effort to promote additional services, this is a tool. This is our tool using the rapid response funds, the 1E funds, that do have significant flexibility, and the state and regions and local areas may devise additional strategies or conduct activities to minimize the negative impacts of on dislocated workers, on businesses and communities, to ensure that those that are impacted by layoffs are able to get reemployed as quickly as possible. And that really is our bottom line focus here. So we know that the latest data that we've gotten from Department of Employment and Security, we know that unemployment continues to persist. And the key message here is that, as in the past, low-income individuals and those with barriers to unemployment are the ones that are the hardest hit. And that is absolutely the case through this latest pandemic, especially those in leisure and hospitality and other industries where you have those low income workers that are out of work. And the question being, will there be a job when they return or want to return, or when life returns to a semblance of normal? So again, this is our opportunity to reach out to these workers and to move them up in a career path. Just some other statistics around number of formal rapid response, and these are through Warren. As you can see, we had a massive spike in June and July. That was followed by kind of our unprecedented levels in March. The activity has started to fall off a bit, and the question is, you know, are we continuing to get, you know, is there truly a leveling off of layoffs, or are we just seeing many more small companies lay off? So again, this is a number of workers here. You know, the question being, you know, how do we connect with those individuals? Some key questions there. Part of the 1E funds are available for outreach to dislocated workers and strategies to make connections to employees in those severely targeted industries, those most vulnerable workers that are currently out of jobs. So again, in order to address these issues that I've laid out here, we are, with the Department of Commerce, we are now in a position to budget funding for additional dislocated worker services, and it's a two-pronged approach. The first will be through a formula allocation to all of the local workforce areas, utilizing the program year 2020 formula Title 1B grant. We will be issuing a notice within, most likely within the next 4 to 6 weeks, that will outline, you know, what that amount will be. Again, it's projected at this point to be $1 to $3 million, and that will provide additional resources for PY 2020 that you can have in reserve to utilize during the, you know, especially around those critical months of from now until the fall. You know, those months where we don't have full access to your PY program year 2021 funds, right? This can be utilized for, you know, those activities, providing services and both career services and training services to individuals during the first quarter, you know, and supporting, you know, helps you get around that whole first quarter limit issues. We will issue a notice based on our current formula. We have run the projections and we can share those numbers with you if you're interested. Your regional manager can share that with you, what a projected number would look like if we were to, let's say, issue $2 million. We can tell you what that would equate to for your local area. But I want to emphasize that final decisions have not been made as it relates to how much, whether it's $1 million or whether it's 2 or 3 million. Those decisions, again, will be made over the next couple of weeks. I do want to point out that additional funding is available right now to support your immediate and ongoing strategies to support job seekers and employers. And Kelly today is going to talk about those strategies that we highlighted in the funding notice that were taken not only from the training the training letters from USDOL, but also from some best practices from National Governors Association. So with that, I will turn it over to Kelly.
Thanks, John. So as we look at strategies to rapidly connect job seekers to work, we need to continue to push ourselves to enhance the workforce development system in ways that we haven't done before. Coping with and recovering from the economic strain of the pandemic requires a tech-forward approach to regional hiring and workforce development. Whether job seekers are retraining in a new field or quickly re-entering the workforce, they need a welcoming, high-functioning, multifaceted system to help them get back to work quickly. Funding will support enhanced efforts to connect dislocated workers to jobs, including individualized career counseling, job search assistance, short-term training, credentialing opportunities, and local labor market guidance to inform job seekers of possible career pathways. We highly encourage reviewing the strategies listed and identify ways to increase capacity. It is critical that the local workforce areas continue to expand and provide innovative solutions and services as part of their workforce strategy to get job seekers back to work. As we look at supportive services, pre-existing economic disparities, especially along the digital divide, are only exacerbated by the pandemic. Strategies that move from relief to equitable resiliency in a post-COVID economy, are encouraged. The state will award funding to local workforce areas that provide enhanced supportive services to help workers overcome barriers to employment. We highly encourage the review of local supportive service policies and a temporary expansion of the supportive services that are offered. Listed are a few examples of program-funded services to expand support to participants. Each local workforce area is encouraged to utilize referrals to community programs, emergency assistance, state and federal public assistance programs, and other wraparound services. Regional collaboration is highly encouraged to support targeted industry sector initiatives. The state will award funding to local workforce areas that administer pilot programs and innovative interventions focused on serving workers in the most impacted industries, including but not limited to creative arts, leisure, and hospitality. Other efforts can be focused on industry-related training specific to the region's needs. As customers, partners, and leaders of the workforce system, businesses are vital to the success of the public workforce system. As the economy adjusts and recovers across Illinois, business engagement has never been more important. Regional and local business needs will continue to evolve in response to the pandemic. Business services are critical to support employers deciding how best to continue operating during the pandemic, ramping up quickly post-pandemic, or retooling to meet emerging demand or shifting operations and service delivery to virtual platforms. The workforce system has the potential to address pressing employer needs and to support economic success for business, individuals, and communities. We encourage you to take a look at some of these strategies. Industry sector activities and strategies that align the skills of the workforce with the needs of the employer are also highly encouraged. This is encouraged through partnerships between employers, training providers, and workforce boards. Listed are some strategies that support job skilling training and work-based learning. Sector strategies can also help businesses recruit and retain skilled workers, while also helping underskilled workers gain requisite occupational skills and obtain good jobs in the related industries. This includes collaboration with industry associations to provide customized training linked to industry recognized credentials. We've included here a variety of additional resources and tools that can be utilized as workforce development leaders continue to adjust to and rethink the best path forward in these uncertain economic times. Provided are a few links to webinars, data systems, and recovery best practices as you implement strategies supporting a pathway to recovery. We've listed a few labor market information tools and a few links to several different toolkits. The next slide continues on listing several different upcoming webinars and links and additional resources for supportive services. We highly encourage you to work regionally, but also work with your local regional manager to identify some innovative strategies and how funding can best support you moving forward.
All right. Thanks, Kelly. So this next part of the presentation is going to be focused around just some of the nuts and bolts of the application. It is anticipated that the state will award between $2 and $4 million for these projects. As Kelly mentioned, we are encouraging you to work collaboratively across local areas with different regions and partners. Would note that the only local workforce area Title 1B grantees are eligible to apply. But if you're a partner and you have an idea, I would encourage you to connect with those team members and let's flesh out your ideas. That's really what we want to do today is start that conversation. As it relates to use of those funds, we will follow the review criteria that I'm going to speak to in a moment, but the geographic distribution of those awards will be something that we will consider when we make the final funding commitments. So the information for the funding notice is posted on the Illinois WorkNet e-policy guide using this link. And if you go to this blue area here, you can get access to the funding notice. I also want to show, if I can make the technology work here, I want to show the location of the some application materials here on the Illinois WorkNet site. And so this is our WIOA implementation during COVID-19. So hopefully you've seen this site and have used the information. If you scroll down to funding, layoff aversion funding, you'll see that this notice information is listed here, as well as this presentation. We will have updated frequently asked questions listed here, as well as the training guidance from the U.S. Department of Labor that we spoke to around the One Workforce vision. We'll also have posted, most likely by the end of the day, the actual application documents, as well as the budget templates. And we're going to go through some of those in a minute here, but I want to switch back to our PowerPoint here. Just give me a quick second. And okay. So hopefully you're all seeing those PowerPoint screens again. And the application. So here's your submission information is to work with Lorraine Wareham as well as your regional manager. So if you are requesting additional funds, you can submit those directly to the CEO.oet.grants.illinois.gov site. I would also encourage you on that to copy your regional manager so we're aware of what your ideas are. Funding will be accepted and reviewed on a first come, first served basis. You can submit multiple ideas. The point here is we want to provide you with the flexibility to initiate and expand your existing activities right now, right? So we want to have you, identify strategies and, let's put together a project work plan and discuss that. And, if you need additional resources for that, let's have that discussion. Let's get that funding commitment made. And then we will work with you to establish the grant agreements, to get the application documents in order, to get the full award, the full grant award in order. But I think the key message here is that time is of the essence, and we want to be flexible, or we want to be responsive to your funding requests and the activities that you're undertaking. We are, obviously working within the fiscal year and program year deadlines. And so we will, have a kind of a natural cutoff of mid-May if we want to guarantee a June 30 execution date. That's for a guarantee. We'll accept applications throughout the year. I want to be clear in that. So the only thing that is critical of May 14th is kind of a processing deadline. But again, we want to work with you to get things moving as quickly as feasible. There is no reason, if you have an idea and have a need for the support of that, no reason to wait for May 14th. Get that in, have a conversation with your regional manager as soon as feasible. Application content, and we'll go through the actual document, but it is intended to be pretty broad. We will have a number of kind of metrics that we'll be looking at: employees affected, number of dislocated workers served, businesses assisted. We want to know, what are the key metrics, or what are the key demographics and metrics? So are you targeting those most impacted industries, like, the service sectors and hospitality? And, how does that, fit within your existing strategies in your local and regional plans? Obviously look at, kind of your game plan. What are your resources? Who is going to be responsible for implementing the plan? I would start with a high level concept, and then let's continue to fill in those details working with your regional managers. And then by the time it gets to Lorraine, we will have a scope of work that we're comfortable with, that will then evolve into a specific project work plan that will track with the funding and an eventual grant. Application review process is outlined in the notice. So a team of OET staff will review those applications on a first come, first served basis. We'll look at the regional local need. We'll look at the impact of the project. And as I mentioned, we'll look at the geographic distribution of awards. This program is funded. This is still WIOA Title 1B, statewide activities funds focused around services to dislocated workers and rapid response and layoff aversion activities. All costs obviously have to be documented in accordance with the rules and regulations, including the Uniform Administrative Guidance. We will include these grants as part of your annual monitoring reviews. That is coordinated by the Office of Employment and Training. So before we get to the next step, I want to just show you some of these documents and just kind of walk through. Again, many of you are familiar with the standard application templates. We won't go into a ton of detail, but I do want to just highlight the what we'll call kind of like this application, right? So it is just like the previous program year, program 19. We've got a very high level application that we're looking for. We want to know what are your projected outcomes, how many people you're going to serve, what are those major budget categories for each of the strategies, and tell us what it is you're planning to do. This narrative, it doesn't have to be a 20-page War and Peace. It can be I would start with a high-level executive summary that outlines all of the key components and strategies that you're going to implement, and then from there we can expand out with regard to the detail that's needed to get ourselves to a funding decision and commitment. We may, through this process and working with your regional manager, we may need to request additional information and provide feedback and additional suggestions, so that we've kind of built that into the process here. The budget is straightforward. Again, this is just like a budget summary. We have a budget template that will be used when you start to work with Lorraine Wareham to fully submit the grant application and the uniform budget. So just to be clear, the process in this is to first take a look at your strategies, identify what are your needs around this 1E opportunity, develop a high-level executive summary, and then have some initial discussions with your regional manager. From there, expand and flush out that idea, take a look at that timeline and what it might look like, work with your fiscal team to identify what a budget might look like, and then from there we'll provide guidance on what additional information we need. If you have a robust kind of plan that's ready to go, we will move that forward and make a funding recommendation and provide you with a informal commitment for those funds. And then from there, we will ask you to work with Lorraine Wareham to put together the uniform budget template that is a more more structured than what you're seeing on the screen here. I'll show it to you in a second, as well as the final project summary that we can put into a 1E scope of work. So through the state, we have a number of standard forms. This is the uniform application. This is, again, once you start working with Lorraine, you'll start working with this document. It's standard across all of our formula and non-formula grants. So she'll work with you to complete this document, which is, it's essentially, it's like kind of like the cover sheet of our grant applications, and just identifies, where's the funding and what is the project, and a place for an authorized signature. Our standard budget templates outlines, those costs, and has a tab for each of these budget line items. And if your team needs assistance in filling this out, Lorraine and our team can assist you with that. We have tried to standardize these budget categories and budget line items, across our rapid response program. So, hopefully you will see some consistency now with how we are handling the personnel, the fringe benefits, direct administrative costs, our direct training, work-based training, other program costs, and supportive service and indirect costs. One thing that I do want to point out is that we will be, just like you have in your formula, Title 1B grants, these budget lines 15A, B, C, and D, these are all kind of program specific to our WIOA funding, right? So under direct training, just like we have under the formula, if you click on that tab, you'd enter the funding that is for individual training accounts, or ITAs, right? And you'd have direct training that is other. Under work-based training, we have training that is listed under the work-based, just like our formula funds. So again, it's intended to mirror how we do our formula funds, and that budget template will be posted on the Illinois WorkNet site as well. So let me just wrap up the presentation here, and then we can get to the Q&A. Give me 1 second to switch here.
Yes, John, we have quite a few questions. So
okay.
Sarah would like to know, are the trends happening in Illinois similar across the US?
So I don't have specific information nationwide. We can speak to what is happening in the Region 5, the Midwest Region Office, based on some conversations with other states. I would say that it is inconsistent. I think that several states within even our region, some states are like Illinois, where it's a mix of in-person versus open to the public, and their numbers are moving kind of at the levels they expected to see. Other states are seeing challenges that we're seeing in Illinois. We'd have to look at the data to see, across the U.S. we could look into that. But I think Midwest. I don't think Illinois is the only state that is in this situation. But again, I think DOL is looking at these numbers and reading the messages that are intended, from these guidance letters, it's clear that both from the federal level and the state level, that there is a push to do absolutely everything that we can in this critical moment to serve the job seekers and businesses. That's really the message.
Okay, great. Thank you, John. Diana would like to know, so does that mean that our 80% by June 30th, 2021 will go up?
The answer is potentially yes. I will say that Office of Employment and Training is going to be recommending to the state workforce board that the 80% obligation requirements would disregard the additional funds that would be provided through this additional allocation. So, obviously, if you increase the full amount, the amount that local areas would need to obligate to hit 80% of that would obviously also go up. We understand that this is a concern and this is a real issue. And so we are scheduled to have that discussion in early March with the executive committee. And that is one of the reasons that we're holding the next notice that would outline the additional dislocated worker allocation because we want to have an answer to that question.
Okay, great, thank you. LaDonna would like to know, okay, that was more of a comment. She said, yes, I would love to see estimated projections. This will help in planning for the 1E application. And then Patrick just wanted to let everyone know, do not be afraid to share your ideas and think through strategies with your regional manager. And Patrick also has a question for, I think, all of our attendees today. What are challenges with dislocated workers? What are the immediate needs of businesses in your area? How can or what are the coordinated efforts to address these? Let's think this through. So I think those are all questions posed specifically to the attendees for today. And then in the Q&A, specifically for the presenters, Lisa would like to know, the 1E dollars can be used for outreach activities, ? Childcare assistance for clients, or was that in reference to the additional dollars that will be allocated to each area for the PY20 1D grants, or both?
Yeah, these are great questions. And so let me just first and foremost, just what I'm sharing with you on the screen. And again, connect back with your regional manager to give you the, to share. I don't want to post these numbers because these are for kind of discussion purposes only. Based on a hypothetical $2 million allocation, this is what we would expect to see in each of the local areas. So LaDonna and LWIA 11, you'd be looking at approximately $40,000 in additional funds. The other areas, I'll just leave this on the screen so you can, kind of take a look at. This is really, this is kind of the bottom line column here that's highlighted, what you would expect as far as an increase in your area based on the current formula. As it relates to questions around, can you utilize WIOA funds for childcare, or the answer is yes, and that's a supportive service, right? And so that's applicable for any of the titles, right? So older youth with children, adults, dislocated workers, if that's in your supportive service policy, that's absolutely something that you can provide. And I think, as Kelly suggested or encouraged you to take a look at those supportive service policies versus what are the barriers that you are hearing from job seekers to coming in and enrolling and getting into training. Other items that were, maybe historically have been discouraged are computers, tablets, even broadband connection, right? So, before the pandemic, it was, absolutely discouraged and even in some areas prohibit. DOL has made it clear, and the state, Illinois has affirmed that that is an allowable cost. You need to have policies and procedures in place so that you control the risks of abuse. But if you have a participant who's in training and they have moved to a virtual environment, the cost of a PC or a tablet or equipment to participate in that training is absolutely allowable. Obviously they don't need a Cadillac when a Ford would do. But again, those are some policies and procedures that you can put into place. And I think, as Kelly suggested, you can even consider a temporary expansion of the supportive services during this emergency, the pandemic emergency. Those are just some other options. And apologize, I didn't get the last part of the question around supportive services.
She just wanted to focus on if that reference was allocated for each area of the 1D grants or for both.
Gotcha. Yeah. So I guess the issue or the point would be that, so what you're seeing on the screen right now, again, is this hypothetical $2 million in a allocation. It doesn't mean that LWIA 11 is only limited to providing expanded supportive services until $40,000 is expanded. Absolutely not. You could make a strategic decision to, provide, enhanced wraparound services, as appropriate, right? You got to look at your budget. You got to look at the barriers of your job seekers, and then, figure out, what is appropriate. And again, you may want to consider, at least a time limit, link it back to the COVID response timeline, and then obviously provide yourself with flexibility so your career planners can, make, good decisions where the level of services that are being coordinated are appropriate for each of your job seekers.
Great, thank you so much, John. Just to clarify, this is competitive application or automatically being allocated to all LWIAs? LWIA.
That's a great question. So there are two components to this notice. The first is to let everyone know that the state is working on a forthcoming notice that will provide you with additional formula resources to your PY 2020 grant. Okay. Again, that was the allocation that I just posted. So that's kind of part one. So I guess to step back, we've identified the problem. The problem is that our numbers are lower than expected, and we have more funding or we have the same amount of funding at this point, but next program year, starting maybe as early as the spring and summer, we project an increase in need and a potential decrease in program year 2021 funding. So as a result, the state is looking to award, in part one, we are looking to award additional dislocated worker funds immediately before June 30th of 2021. And then part two is that we are encouraging every local area to go through all the steps that Kelly and I have mentioned today and looking at additional strategies, even on top of that formula allocation, to reach out to job seekers and businesses and to use this rapid response 1E funds and these layoff aversion funds to do exactly that. So this is seen as an enhancement. Part 1 is a formula. Part 2 is an application, right? So the first part will be every area will do this. The second part is optional but encouraged. So there is no maximum per application. But again, take a look at what are your current needs. Our full pool of funding for this second part, right? This application, you know, you're competing kind of against other areas, right? Our pool of available funds is $2 to $4 million.
Is the supplemental allocation for the max, is that the max the LWA would be eligible to apply for under the 1E?
So, I mean, you theoretically could come in for $1 million or $2 million under this, but you would have to outline what is your project plan. If you wanted to come in as like the Northeast region for that amount, you know, that would be something that we would entertain. It would have to be one of the local workforce areas in the region to you know, be the grantee. Similarly, in other areas of the state, we would definitely encourage that as well.
What about layoff aversion capacity outreach for local areas to assist with industry/sector and transitional crosswalks? Is this opportunity allowable with these funds?
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that absolutely we would want to, you know, identify, you know, those areas that, you know, have had a, you know, a huge hit. You know, obviously the hospitality, creative arts on the one hand has been, you know, had a huge hit, right? On the other hand, like transportation, distribution, logistics, you know, those jobs are booming. So how do you crosswalk those skills into getting placements? Absolutely, those are activities that we want to encourage.
When do these funds need to be spent? Will there be an 80% waiver option for this program year?
So I think we answered that one. I think the 80% is something that we're going to be requesting from the board, and we'll have more information on that by the end of or before the formula allocation notice is issued. We'll have an answer on the 80% requirement. These grants, the formula piece of this, the end date for those formula grants will still be June 30th, 2022. Any additional funds, so the second part of this, where you're coming in for a project and requesting additional funds above and beyond those formula dollars, right? Those grants, the end date for those grants will also be set at June 30th of 2022, but we may have some flexibility to extend those on, you know, at least another 6 months or so. So you have a project that you're looking like, well, you know, it might be 18 months or so, or even beyond. You know, we could probably take it to December 31st of 2022, you know, depending on the project.
Okay, so that kind of answers a couple of these other questions for the Max Grant Life. Is there flexibility in the funds to hire a professional advisor or advertiser, sorry, hire a professional advertiser to develop and implement a true marketing advertising plan to recruit participants into the programs?
So fund for program outreach would be an allowable cost. again, you'd have to take a look at, what are the, what does that total cost look like? So the cost of outreach is an allowable cost, but just have to be careful of whether you call it advertising versus outreach. And we will provide a more detailed answer to this question on the Q&A.
We had some questions about dislocator worker funding only, and Patrick replied to everyone, I believe, and said incumbent workers can be layoff aversion, which can be a great introduction for a business in need. A phase 2 would be to do work-based learning for new hires, dislocated workers in parentheses there. So that was addressed to everyone. And Patrick, every time you respond, you're responding only to the panelists. If you're able to respond to panelists and attendees, then the attendees will be able to see all your great comments and feedback. And then the next question is, will the budget cut have a huge impact on our ability to provide services to the increased amount of dislocated workers? Two factors of the triple constraints are being impacted, such as cost and scope. How have we typically had more than 10% of funding that aren't utilized? I think the budget cut should be documented as a huge risk. So the question, there's two questions there.
We could go back to that slide. We have had let me just go back there. We have had years where we have had a budget cut of 10%, but specifically, I think between PY17 and PY18, it was about that much, but that was after we hit like kind of our peak allotment. So it was an allotment of about 156 million. Right now, PY20, we're at about 149 million. So if you take a 10% cut, that is just as deep of a cut as we've seen in recent history. So again, that is why I think we are acting now based on the US DOL's projected the proportion that Illinois gets out of the WIOA formula funds. Again, the bottom line is that they're projecting a 10% cut for us. What that means in actual numbers will depend on what is the total funding available, right? So, so there are still a number of unknowns, and we are working through those, but based on the best information that we have at this moment, decision has been made to number one, make you all aware of what is happening from a funding landscape, and number two, and more importantly, encourage you to continue to implement your strategies of outreach to dislocated workers and businesses, and wanting to reassure you that resources will be available here, at least in this next program year, to continue those services. So in other words, you are hearing DOL say, well, we're going to potentially hold back funds, and Illinois is not looking like it's on the best side of that. A normal reaction might be to contract and conserve your funds. And so we are saying, do not conserve your funds. We're saying we're asking you to double down on your strategies for outreach. The time is now for action. for a number of reasons. And so that is a risk factor, right? So I mean, there's uncertainty is always going to be a risk, and that is the point again why we are issuing this, why we issued this notice now, and why we will issue an additional funding notice for additional funds in the PY 2020 formula grants.
Perfect. Patrick just put in the chat. Everyone can see that great comment he has. And then it looks like Kelly is responding to some of the other questions
Okay, great.
that you've briefly covered, John, but she's just responding via text. I believe she's answered the last couple, which is
Okay.
great. Thank you so much, Kelly. I don't see any others coming through.
Maybe just a recap on grant term end dates and then the max grant life.
Yeah, so again, so for kind of the formula piece of this, that grant end date will be June 30th of 2020. If you come in for additional funds above and beyond the formula, which we encourage you to do, that grant end date, the default will be also June 30th of 2022, but we have the ability to extend it out, you know, at least six more months depending on the project. So December 31st of 2022. Max grant for, you know, the proposals that you come in with, there is no maximum. So it's what is reasonable to the activities that you have planned. So we have a total pool of $2 to $4 million available that has been budgeted and identified. We will have additional funds in PY 2021 that may be able to you know, put into this mix, but that's an unknown. So again, right now we have $2 to $4 million that is available in this pool, and you know, we encourage you to, you know, take a look at the strategies and the resources that you need, right? Look at the complete picture, look at your DWG funding, look at your formula funding, look at this as additional funding, and match that up against your strategies and you know, potential projections for next year. And you know, that's how I would approach it. All right. Any other questions?
No, we are getting great presentation comments, which is awesome. That's always nice to hear that feedback.
Great.
And
Thank you.
I did want to reiterate that this was recorded, so it will be up on the Illinois WorkNet website and our Illinois Center for Specialized Professional Support website. And that will be up within 48 hours, so you can always access any of this information at a later date if you need to refresh your mind. And I don't see any other questions or anything coming through. A lot of people are just saying great job. And so, yeah, I think I will go ahead and close this out. Any last comments from John or anyone on your team?
Yeah, I would just say thank you all for, again, for your participation today, and again, for all the work that you are doing. We know there are major challenges. You are, you know, kind of the key in the front line, and we appreciate what you are doing, and we want to work with you. And again, thank you for your participation today, and Annie and Brian and Kelly, if you have anything else you want to add?
I don't think so. Thank you, John, and thank you, everyone. I know many of us are scheduled to have conversations over the next week or so, so I know we're all looking forward to continuing the conversation.
Great. All right. thank you all again, and let us know if you have any follow-up questions. Be happy to and are encouraged to hear from you soon. So stay warm and safe, everybody, and we'll be talking with you very soon. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone.